Rain poured from the sky like a blessing in disguise that Tuesday morning, as if the universe had plans no one knew yet. Sarah Mitchell, a 29-year-old waitress from a small town in Indiana, had just ended her graveyard shift at the local diner. Her eyes were tired, her feet sore, and her uniform smelled like coffee and maple syrup. All she wanted was to collapse on her tiny couch with a cup of tea and drift into sleep. But life, as it often does, had other plans. As she walked to her rusty Toyota Corolla, a frail voice called out from across the parking lot. "Miss, excuse me, miss." Turning around, she saw an elderly man clutching his chest, pale and disoriented. Without a second thought, Sarah rushed to him. "Are you all right, sir?" she asked, steadying his trembling frame. "I think I need to go to the hospital," he whispered. Without hesitating, Sarah helped him into her car and drove straight to St. Mary's Medical Center, navigating the slick roads with a mix of urgency and care. She stayed with him the entire time, even though she wasn't family, even though she was exhausted, even though she had her own worries waiting at home. When the nurse finally came out to say he was stable, Sarah let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. "You can go now, miss. We'll take it from here," the nurse said kindly. Sarah nodded and left quietly, never even asking his name. 3 days later, in the heart of New York City, in a towering glass building overlooking Central Park, Andrew Cole, the grandson of the old man, stood frozen in his office. He was the youngest CEO in his company's history, a man known for his sharp decisions and colder demeanor. But today, he wasn't thinking about profit margins or expansion strategies. He was staring at his grandfather's voicemail, "A girl saved me, Andy. She didn't know who I was. She just helped find her." It wasn't like his grandfather to make such requests. A retired teacher, the old man had always taught Andrew the importance of humility and kindness, virtues Andrew feared he had lost on his climb to the top. With the help of a few favors and hospital contacts, Andrew tracked her down, Sarah Mitchell, small-town Indiana. He flew out the next morning. Sarah was sweeping the diner floor when the man in a navy blue suit walked in. He looked out of place among the chrome stools and faded ketchup bottles. "Are you Sarah Mitchell?" he asked. She nodded, cautiously. "Can I help you?" "I'm Andrew Cole. You helped my grandfather. He asked me to find you." Sarah blinked, confused. "Your grandfather? The man I drove to the hospital?" "I just did what anyone would have done." "No," Andrew said gently. "You did what few people would do." They sat down, and Andrew listened as Sarah spoke about her life, how she worked 2 jobs, how she cared for her younger brother who had cerebral palsy, how she never expected thanks for what she did. Andrew was quiet for a long moment, then stood. "Would you come to New York with me? Just for a weekend. As a thank you. My grandfather wants to see you." Sarah hesitated. I can't afford that. And I have to look after my brother. We'll take care of everything. Flights. Accommodations. And we'll make sure your brother is cared for. Please. It would mean a lot." 3 days later, Sarah found herself in a penthouse suite, looking out at a skyline she'd only seen in movies. Andrew's grandfather cried when he saw her, holding her hands and thanking her with a heart full of gratitude. "You reminded me," he said, "that goodness still exists." What began as a weekend became a turning point. Andrew spent more time with Sarah, drawn not just to her kindness but to her strength, her honesty, her ability to see beauty where others saw struggle. He found himself opening up about his own fears, the pressure, the loneliness, the way his heart had grown distant in the race for success. Weeks passed. Andrew offered Sarah a position at his company's charitable foundation. She declined at first. "I'm not qualified," she said. "You have what most people don't." "Heart," Andrew replied. Eventually, she said yes. She moved to New York, but only if her brother could come too. Andrew agreed without hesitation. Together, they started a new chapter, Sarah overseeing outreach programs for underserved communities, using her own experience to guide her work. Her presence transformed the foundation and softened Andrew in ways his board hadn't seen in years. Months later, on a stage at a charity gala, Andrew introduced Sarah to a room of powerful people. "She taught me that no act of kindness is ever wasted," he said, voice shaking slightly. "She didn't know who my grandfather was. She just knew he needed help. And in helping him, she helped me find something I thought I'd lost, my humanity." The crowd stood and applauded. But Sarah's eyes were only on Andrew, who now looked nothing like the stoic CEO she first met, but instead, like a man who had found peace in purpose. They didn't fall in love instantly. But they grew into each other's lives slowly, tenderly. Through long walks in Central Park, quiet mornings with coffee and laughter, shared dreams of building something that mattered. Years later, Sarah would tell the story to her own children. About the day she chose kindness, never knowing it would change her life. About how helping one man reminded another what it meant to be human. And in the glow of a fireplace, surrounded by family, she'd whisper to them what her heart had always known. When you give without expecting anything in return, life gives you back more than you ever imagined. Because in the end, it wasn't about being found by a CEO. It was about finding herself through a single act of compassion, and reminding the world that even the smallest kindness can ripple into forever.